It is 3 in the morning. Somewhere in the world, a person is lying in bed with their eyes wide open. Their body is still. Their breathing is slow. But inside their skull, a conversation from 6 years ago is playing again. A sentence, a glance, a half-second of hesitation before someone answered them. Their brain has decided, without asking permission, that tonight is the right time to examine this moment one more time. In case there is something hidden inside it that they missed the first 1,000 times. While most of the world is asleep, millions of other minds are doing exactly the same thing. Different memories, different faces, different rooms, but the same loop, the same quiet, exhausting machinery running in the dark. This is not insomnia. This is something with a name, a mechanism, and a strange truth that almost nobody talks about. And if you happen to be watching this at 3 in the morning, you probably already know what I mean. Let us zoom in, past the skin, past the bone, into the soft and electric universe inside your skull. Your brain weighs about 1.4 kilograms. That is roughly the weight of a small loaf of bread. But inside that loaf, there are around 86 billion neurons, connected by something close to 100 trillion synaptic links. That is more connections than there are stars in our galaxy. A galaxy, folded up and tucked behind your forehead. Most of that galaxy stays quiet most of the time. But there is one network that almost never sleeps. Scientists call it the default mode network. It is the brain's default radio station, the one that plays whenever you are not actively tuning to something else. When you stop working, stop scrolling, stop talking, this network does not switch off. It switches on. It starts daydreaming, remembering, predicting, rehearsing things that have not happened, and replaying things that already have. In most people, this network politely steps aside when there is a real task to do. In an overthinker, it never quite leaves the room. The volume goes down sometimes, but the broadcast never ends. Imagine a small radio in the back of your house that you forgot how to turn off. For some people, the radio is courteous and plays softly at night. For others, the dial broke years ago, and the music plays at full volume into the dark. The strange thing is that the part of your brain that exhausts you is also the part that produces your deepest insights. The same engine, just running with no map. Most videos about overthinking will tell you that this is a problem. Something to fix, something to quiet, a bug in the human design. But there is a version of this story that almost nobody tells you, and it is the one we are going to follow tonight. An overthinking brain is not a broken brain. It is a brain tuned differently, and that tuning did not come from nowhere. Some of it is genetic. Some of it is shaped by what happened to you when you were small, and some of it is older than language itself, inherited from people who lived 100,000 years before any of us were born. Your brain takes about 2% of your body weight, but it eats roughly 20% of your daily energy. That is an expensive organ. Evolution does not pay that kind of bill for nothing. Nature is not sentimental. It doesn't keep traits that drain energy without giving something back. In the same way that no company keeps paying salary to an employee who never shows up. So here's the real question. If overthinking were simply a malfunction, it should have been quietly deleted from our species a long time ago. But it is still here. In you, in me, in millions of people lying awake tonight. The question is not why you think too much. The question is why your brain was built this way at all. To answer that, we need to look at 3 small regions inside your head and the conversation that happens between them. The first region is the amygdala. It is about the size of an almond, and it sits deep in the center of your brain like a small, ancient alarm bell. Its job is to decide whether something is dangerous, and it makes that decision in roughly 12 to 20 milliseconds. That is faster than you can become aware of what you are looking at. By the time your conscious mind notices a tense email, your amygdala has already started ringing. The second region is the prefrontal cortex, the wide, folded surface behind your forehead. This is the part of you that reasons, plans, weighs options, and constructs arguments. It is the calm board of directors that tries to make sense of the alarm. The third region is the hippocampus, your memory archive. Every important emotional moment you have ever lived is stored somewhere in its files. In a typical brain, these three regions chat now and then. A polite exchange, a short meeting. In an overthinking brain, they message each other constantly. A small signal from the amygdala, like the strange tone of a message from your boss, gets passed up to the prefrontal cortex. The cortex turns to the hippocampus and asks, "Has this happened before?" The hippocampus does not pull out one memory. It pulls out 47. This is not weakness. This is architecture. An overthinker's brain is not poorly built. It is wired to miss nothing. The trouble is that sometimes there is nothing to miss, and the wiring keeps searching anyway. Now travel back with me, 200,000 years. Long before cities, before writing, before farming. Our earliest ancestors lived in small groups, somewhere between 50 and 150 people. The savannah was wide, the nights were long, and a wrong decision could be the last decision you ever made. In those groups, two kinds of people tended to survive long enough to leave behind children. The first kind acted quickly. They trusted easily, charged forward, tried the unfamiliar berry, faced the unknown sound in the grass. Some of them lived, many did not. The second kind watched. They noticed the chief's tightened jaw before anyone else did. They remembered who took more than their share of meat last winter. They read the sky from the cry of a single bird. They were slower. They worried more. They lost sleep over things that had not yet happened. But they lived, and they passed their wiring forward. Anthropologists have a name for this. They call it the sentinel hypothesis. In nearly every ancient tribe, there seems to have been a small group of people whose nervous systems ran a little hotter than the others. They slept lightly. They scanned faces. They turned every silence into a question. They were not the strongest members of the group. They were the early warning system. What is fascinating is that this pattern is not just human. In study after study across more than 100 species, from fruit flies to fish to primates, roughly 15 to 20% of any population consistently shows up as more cautious, more reactive, more observant. Evolution keeps reinventing this character, again and again, in completely different bodies. Biologists call this an evolutionarily stable strategy, which is a clinical way of saying that nature seems to need both types in the room. Think of a football team. You cannot win with 11 strikers. You also cannot win with 11 goalkeepers. You need the ones who run forward without looking back, and you need the ones who see the whole field, who notice the small movement at the edge of the frame. The ancient tribe was no different. So the next time someone tells you to stop thinking so much, remember that you are carrying a role that humanity has needed for hundreds of thousands of years. You are not malfunctioning. You are inherited. And here is where the story turns. You might be thinking, all right, so overthinking is an evolutionary gift. Case closed. But the truth is more uncomfortable than that. The overthinking brain was an advantage in the world it was built for. It is not the brain that has gone wrong. It is the world that has changed underneath it. Our ancestors met perhaps 150 people in their entire lifetime. You meet 150 new faces in a single scroll through your morning feed. The machinery that was carefully designed to read tiny social signals among a small, familiar tribe is now being asked to process thousands of micro-expressions, tones, comments, and reactions every single week. The radar that was tuned to scan one quiet valley is now standing in the middle of Times Square with the dial still set to maximum sensitivity. It is not surprising that it overheats. It is surprising that it still works at all. The real twist is this. You may not be thinking too much. The world may simply be sending more signals than any human brain was ever built to absorb, like bringing a whale into a swimming pool and asking why it keeps bumping into the walls. The whale is not broken. The pool is wrong. Before we go into the most surprising part of this story, let me take a small detour. If your mind is the kind that does not switch off easily at night, you already know that the hardest moment is not the thinking itself. It is the moment between the thinking and sleep. The body wants to rest, but the broadcast keeps playing. Anything that gives that broadcast a softer landing, a quieter room, a slower pulse, is worth its weight in gold. Tonight's video is supported by something that does exactly that for many of the viewers of this channel, and you will find a link in the description if you ever want to try it for yourself. With that quietly mentioned, let us return to where the story gets strange. Because here's the part the title of this video promised you. The surprising truth. For decades, overthinking has been written about as a problem to be cured. A symptom of anxiety, a flaw in the personality. But over the last 20 years, brain imaging has begun to tell a different story. People who score high on rumination tend to show, on average, a slightly thicker prefrontal cortex, faster communication between the two hemispheres of the brain, and surprisingly high scores on tests of empathy and moral reasoning. They are not the people who feel the least. They are often the people who feel and notice the most. And then comes the finding that almost nobody expects. The same mental machinery that produces overthinking also produces creativity. They are not two different systems. They are the same engine, running on different fuel. Both come from a brain that refuses to accept the first available answer. Both come from a mind that keeps turning the object in its hands, looking at it from one more angle, asking one more question. The same loop that keeps you awake at 3 in the morning replaying a conversation is the same loop that lets a writer find a character no one else could see. The same restlessness that makes you analyze a coworker's silence is the same restlessness that allows a scientist to notice a hidden connection between two unrelated fields. The same depth that pulls you into your own head can pull you, on a different day, into a poem, a piece of music, a problem worth solving. The difference between overthinking and deep thinking is not the brain, it is the direction. An overthinker without a question to chase will eat itself. The same brain, given a question worth its weight, can produce something extraordinary. This is why when you look at the people who write the books, build the strange theories, design the small inventions, and listen patiently to other people's pain, you find an unusually high number of self-described overthinkers. They did not become creative by stopping their minds. They became creative by giving their minds somewhere to go. A river without banks becomes a swamp. The same river, given banks, can turn turbines and light entire cities. Your brain does not need less thinking. It needs a channel deep enough to hold the water. Now let us step back, way back, out of your bedroom, out of your city, out of this century. Your brain, this 1.4 kilograms of warm electricity, is the end product of nearly 4 billion years of evolution. Every neuron in your head is the descendant of cells that survived 5 mass extinctions. Every thought loop you hate at 3 in the morning is a small inheritance from ancestors who lived long enough to pass their wiring to you. In the quiet, irritating moment when you lie awake, wondering why your mind will not stop, you are using the same machinery that kept your great-great-great-grandmothers alive through winters, famines, plagues, and wars they could not name. That machinery has not rested in 200,000 years. And tonight, by some strange accident of timing, it happens to be awake inside you. You are not glitching. You are running ancient software on a world that became too new, too fast. There is a quiet kind of dignity in seeing that clearly. Not pride exactly. Something gentler. The simple recognition that the thing you have been ashamed of is actually older and more loyal than you knew. If you have lived as an overthinker, you have probably spent years trying to turn this brain off. Trying to be calmer, lighter, easier. More like the people who seem able to drop a worry and walk away. But the surprising truth in this story is not a trick to switch off your mind. The truth is that you do not need to switch it off. You need to understand it. A mind that thinks a lot is not a weak mind. It is a mind that has not yet been shown where to put all of that energy. When you give it nothing to work on, it will invent a problem on its own, and it will usually invent the most painful one it can find. That is why so many overthinkers feel better when they are writing, gardening, learning an instrument, helping another person, or studying something they love. Not because these activities distract them, Because for the first time, their mind finally has a current worth flowing into. Maybe you were born to think about better things than the ones you have been forcing yourself to think about. And here, at the end, is the part that very few videos about overthinking will tell you. The world will always need people who look longer, who listen more carefully, who refuse to believe the first easy answer. In a century that is becoming faster, louder, and more impatient every year, the slow thinkers, the deep thinkers, the ones who lie awake turning a question in their hands, may be exactly the people who keep the rest of it from breaking apart. So the next time your mind refuses to shut down at 3 in the morning, try a different question. Not how do I stop thinking, but where do I send all of this thinking? A flame without a stove can burn down a house. The same flame, given a stove, can warm an entire winter. Your brain is not the enemy you have been treating it as. It is an ancient, expensive, beautiful instrument that has been waiting, sometimes for decades, for you to hand it something worth playing. The question is no longer whether you think too much. The question is what, in this short and strange life, deserves the full weight of your attention. And that is a question worth losing a little sleep over. I will leave the answer to you.